whenever you have 3 pieces of paper, I get a little bit nervous. As means
I could drop one.
Extra research, drop one.
Okay, that's next segment anyway.
Okay, who cares? Get rid of it.
Let's not deal with it.
It's always fun. You and I were talking this morning. It's always fun to look back at deals because sometimes we think of them in retrospect as one-sided. We only remember one side of it. Not on your watch. That is our assignment today. When you think of that, what deals stand out in that vein?
We'll do it again, right?
Okay, let's do it.
Next Tuesday, when the trade's made, we'll talk about the star we know.
Of course.
Who gets traded. And we'll go, and here are the players they're traded for. And we'll forget, 30 years from now, there might be a Seinfeld episode where we might have to mention Jay Buhner for Ken Phelps, right? And that's the kind of trade that was made in July 1988. Historically, they were August trades, but Jeff Bagwell for Larry Anderson, right? Larry Anderson was the guy mentioned that day. John Smoltz for Doyle Alexander. Doyle Alexander's the guy mentioned that day. And we kind of have big ones that we talk about a lot, which is James Shields for Fernando Tatis Jr. Was a trade. Yordan Alvarez for Josh Fields. But there were some in recent years that I think are helping contenders right now. And we didn't talk about the players who were helping the contenders right now.
These are different, all one for one. I mean, at the time that these happened, did you look at any of these prospects as a future star?
Yeah, I mean, again, especially back then, there wasn't Baseball America to the level it is,
sure.
Baseball Perspectives. We really know the prospects now, so we probably talk about it a little more. But, we still always talk about the known quantity. And I think you could look at some of the pennant races this year and go, oh, they're being impacted by the unknown guys we didn't talk about much on our shows then.
The trade deadline is so interesting, and the day after is the most fun because you kind of get to say, okay, this team won the deadline. Last year, we were talking about the Twins as though they needed pitching. They benefited from that deadline. Now, a year later, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, they made 4 trades that day. None of them worked. I mean, they were 6 games over 500 in first place when they made the trades. They finished 6 games under 500 in third place, so they didn't help them. But the problem is what you see now in what they gave up, right? Let's just look at, for example, they trade for...
Is it on that paper?
Yes, it's trade for...
Okay.
Well, okay, you want to start with this one. We'll start with Tyler Mahle for these 3 players from the Reds. Right, Steer and Encarnacion Strand are in a young, dynamic lineup. Don't forget Steve Ajar. They redirect him to Cleveland for Will Benson, who's also in that lineup regularly, actually leads the team in OPS. And Tyler Mahle made 4 starts last year. He was hurt part of last year. Then he needed Tommy John surgery, didn't make any starts this year. He's a free agent at the end of the year. You go ahead and put those 3 offensive players I just mentioned on a Twin team that needs offense.
Of course, they could use Spencer Steer.
And by the way, it didn't end there that day for the Twins because they went and got Jorge Lopez also. And you look at, again, the names here. I would concentrate a little. Left-hand pitcher, Cade Povich, is one of the Orioles' better pitching prospects. But, of course, you go to the top there. Ynier Cano was an all-star this year. Put him with Johan Duran. That would be the best closing combo. Instead, it's Cano and Batista in Baltimore. That was a bad day for the Twins.
Nelson Cruz, too. I mean...
Well, no. I'm going to tell you one that actually worked out for them. That was the year before they traded. Let's give them some love. This was one that's helping them this year, right? They traded Nelson Cruz, who didn't play nearly as well for Tampa Bay. Thought they needed the veteran right-handed bat in their lineup, and he just never really fired for them the way he had for the Twins. And there you're sitting with Joe Ryan, who's kind of like their Dylan Cease. High strikeouts, low walks, really helping. The strength of the team for most of this year for the Twins has been the starting pitching, coincidentally, ironically, without Tyler Mahle, right? They could use all those offensive players they traded for their team this year because Joe Ryan's one of the guys who's actually made the rotation strong.
And add Luis Ariz to the bunch. They could use a guy hitting 400. They also need Pablo Lopez. Joe Ryan, by the way, was traded to the Twins when he was competing, I think, in the Summer Olympics at the time. All eyes on the Angels this week for good reason because of Shohei. Last year, it was Mickey Moniak from the Phillies. He's hitting .331. You said this to me, and we looked at the numbers. Where would they be right now? Where would the Angels be without Mickey Moniak?
Again, last year at this time, when this trade is made, we're saying, oh, Syndergaard, does he help the Phillies, the bottom of that rotation, the non-Ranger Suarez, Wheeler, Nola part? And he was okay. The Phillies got to the World Series. He was okay. Mickey Moniak, until about mid-May this year, was just known as maybe one of the worst 1-1s ever, first pick overall draft. Came into the season hitting like 150 in like 60 games. He's been terrific for them. More important, Lauren, is he's been their everyday center fielder since Trout got hurt. He's hitting well over 300 for them in that period of time, and it's helping keep them afloat. If it wasn't, we'd be talking about Ohtani getting traded even more than we already are. One of the reasons that they haven't collapsed is Moniak. Now, I will say this. I think Moniak has 5 walks and 56 strikeouts. I think he's hitting .441 on balls in play. I don't think any of this is sustainable. But value to me is always when you do it as much as what you do. Oh. And they needed Moniak to be good right now, and he's been good right now.
That's interesting. You talk about him affecting the Shohei deal. I mean, are we really thinking of Shohei as if they're 5 games out is different than if they're 7 games out? This week could make a difference. Is that real?
Look, I think the owner of the team is looking for a reason not to trade this player.
Sure.
Right? Like, who wants to trade this player? He's the best player in the world. He's a great pitcher. He's possibly the best hitter in the world. They don't want to trade him, so the longer they stay connected to the race, they've got a very tough schedule coming up. They probably, if there was a baseball czar, they would come in and say, trade him because it's good for you globally over the next 5 years, unless you're 100% positive you can keep him. And I just think that they probably should trade him, but Mickey Moniak is somebody who's allowing them to stay 2 games over 500 and maybe convincing them not to do it.
Baseball czar.
And I should be that person, Lauren.
You should be that
I'm not.
I would elect you.
If someone has to throw their hat in their ring for such a job.
Someone's got to do it. Hey, the Yankees traded for Joey Gallo in 21. How has that deal impacted the deadline?
When you think about it, Gallo was never good for the Yankees. He hit 159 in 140 games for them. They traded him at the deadline last year. Maybe they'll get something out of Clayton Beeter, who's the guy they traded him for. Maybe he'll come up at some point. Maybe they'll use him in a trade in the next week to get something else they need. But look at the 2 names in the middle there, Josh Smith and especially Ezekiel Duran. There was a period where Corey Seager was lost for 32 games earlier in this season. And those are the 2 guys who played shortstop in his stead. They went 19-13 in those games. Seager is their number 2 hitter. He's the best hitter in the lineup. He's their shortstop, their number 2 hitter. And they went 19-13 in 2 games in the standings, in part because those 2 guys combined to have a 787 OPS. Again, mainly Duran. And Duran is mainly the guy. Those are the 2 guys, again. Seager hurt his thumb. He's going to be out at least 10 days. Those 2 guys are playing shortstop again, especially Duran. Duran also played left field, by the way, once Seager came back. The Yankees are looking for a left fielder right now. Ezekiel Duran would look real good in left field. Instead, they did Joey Gallo. And the day of the trade, what did we talk about? We talked about Joey Gallo.
We did.
We didn't talk about Ezekiel Duran.
Comes full circle. Baseball czar, Joel Sherman.
Somebody's got to do this.
What would your first order of business be? Give Robert a raise?
Co-Commissioner Lauren Shahade. She didn't see it coming.
Robert, what do you think about that? I would give you a raise.
Okay, I'm glad someone's giving me a raise.
Okay.
I'm on board with that, absolutely. Good stuff from Joel Sherman. Let's continue this trade talk going through the break, because when we come back, Nolan Arenado to the Dodgers? What? We're going to dive in. That's down the line. We're tied at 3. Move to the 10th. Carlos Correa at the plate.
After 2 bunts, we're going to get into it.
His 13th walk-off hit of his career, including the postseason. That is tied for 3rd most among active players. Twins win over the Mariners. Royals, Guardians. Sal Perez, 2-run homer, 4-0 Kansas City. Excuse me for 1 second.
Oh, along came Bali.
Miles Straw brings in a run. Cuts the lead to 5-3. In the 9th, Stephen Kwan. Oh, what a play by Nick Prado. Scott Barlow secures the save.
Along came Polly. Great. Pepper.
Let it rain.
Good scuba.
Old school.
With you.
All right, so the Royals win 5-3. So that's, let's take a look at the American League postseason picture right now. The Astros are a game back of that second, or for the top wild card spot. For the teams in the hunt for the wild card, you got the Yankees, the Red Sox. You got some heavy hitters in this group in the American League.
We had Hank Azaria on the
Yeah,
show.
friend of the show.
I mean,
Blue Jays, Dodgers.
He was on the juice when he did a walk-in follow.
Jason Hayward puts the Dodgers up 2-0. Then Vladimir Guerrero Jr. ties the game at 2. In the 8th, Max Muncy.
Lean back.
That funky Muncy. That's a solo homer. Remember, he had a grand slam
He's
on
got
Sunday.
good shtick when he goes deep.
Dalton Varsho in the 11th. And the Blue Jays go on to win 6-3. By the way, Max Muncy, the 11th player in team history to hit 25 homers in at least 4 seasons. Pirates,
When
Padres,
is enough for the Padres?
Leo Peguero, 2-run homer. His first major league homer for him, and then Carlos Santana had himself a night. Second
Robert
home
was
run.
texting me during this game.
Saying what?
Saying
Enough's enough.
enough's enough for the Padres. 2 homers for Santana. Ha-Sung Kim, he had a 2-homer night. It's 8-4 in the ninth. Trent Grisham flies out to end it. The Pirates win 8-4. 10 total bases for Carlos Santana, ties a career high. Cardinals, Diamondbacks. Paul Goldschmidt back in Arizona against his old team. 1-0 St. Louis. In the 5th, Nolan Arenado. We're going to talk about Arenado possible trade destination.
Out west.
Out west, way. In the 9th, bases loaded, Tyler O'Neill. That ball is well struck. That is down the line. Cardinals go on to win 10-6. Let's take a look at your National League postseason picture.
D-backs are reeling.
Yeah, they are. They're leaking oil right now. Look at where the Cardinals are. Still far back, but do they have a significant run in them? The Giants, man, they've had to do a lot of traveling.
Yes.
Lost yesterday, and but they're in the hunt.
I'm not buying that wild card right now. I'm not buying
Isn't
it.
it so funny how we focus on the Cardinals, but the Cubs are 5 games back and we think they're going to sell everyone?
Yeah, good point. All right, let's step aside here on this edition of MLB Central. We're going to take a look back at some of the deals that did not quite work out. Fields for Yordan, Shields for Fernando Tatis. Our insider Joel Sherman is going to take a closer look. Going to take a closer look at that when we come back.